but causing pain is bad.
Intentionally.
Intentionally.
With bad volition.
With bad motive.
Motive.
So if I cause pain by making you study hard, that may be have a good motive. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, any other? Okay.
Hello?
Yes, hello, go ahead. Hassan?
In my opinion, pain is always bad. I think this, and question 3, yes, people feel pain different. I know this in my physician practice. For example, if we inject the same amount of any pharmacologic agent to different but similar high kilogram, they are always feel the pain different. So everyone have a different feeling of pain. And question 4, I think a mouse feel pain, but we could not do everything after we inject any painkiller to them. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So it's interesting that from your clinical experience, everyone has a different perception of pain to different degree.
But,
Yeah. Go ahead, Lara.
but I think we learn in a bad way. I think we learn that pain is bad, but
Yeah.
it's arduous sensation that pass away.
I also would like to add with Lara's point, like as she mentioned about the either physical or psychological pain, but it has good and badness into it, in both ways. If the psychological pain is intentional, of course it's bad, and even the physical pain, if it's intentional. Sometimes if you look into this, some pain really give you a lot of, good sense of relief. And give you an example of when you're giving birth to the child, baby. The pain really is an intolerable pain, but it gives you such a gift that after the pain, you just forget about the pain. So this is a pain with a good cause and good feelings. So, and also giving another example, like, person to person the pain tolerance differs. So, like, when a person with surgical intervention, followed by heavy pain and then having the catheter to get a relief, it is a sudden relief with this pharmacological drug. And then the person better withdrawn from drug, and then he is more in the oral medication, and then later he feels relief. He is or her aim is healed in the time, and he doesn't need any medicine, or he or she doesn't feel any pain. Pain is not the body. But similarly, some persons who are catheter dependent, drug addict person, they take this same pathogen, which is a huge painkiller role, has to play, but to get a kind of a, artificial addiction, abusing the drug, which is the painkiller itself, into their body to make themselves more reliever, to relieve, get more kind of euphoric amusement. So there are many kind of use of this. So that's why I am fully agreeing with Lara's comment of the physical and psychological, whether the intentional or not, it differs. And it differs with the pain tolerance capacity of the person to person and the intentional motive of the pain.
Okay, thank you. Yes, somebody else?
I want to say some things. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mahmood, yes.
Yes, actually we had a of pain that is mental, psychological and social pain also, and also disease conditions and pains. And actually we always avoid pain because we don't like pain. That is normal. But so pain help to detect the disease also. In case such as I want to like to give that is in diabetic neuropathy. Sometimes we feel that that the patients can't feel any pain when they are walking or they get injured in their soul. So it is also helpful to sometimes to diagnose the disease also. So the pain is not only give us the torture, it also help us some diagnosis of the disease and sometimes also in the research also, because last day we heard that we give the electric shock to the eyes and see the ends. So pain is actually involved in our daily life. Thank you.
Yes, I want to say something. When it comes to pain, psychological, social, or physical, if unjustifiably pain is given to people, then it has been very severely condemned by God, and it has been named oppression. When unjustifiably pain is dedicated to people, it is oppression. And as it is condemned severely by God, this pain also causes revolutions in the world.
Thank you. There was another person trying to talk on Skype. He got cut off. Who was that? Who hasn't spoken yet, please?
I will say,
Yeah, go ahead.
but the person has said what I want to say. I think pain is something that protects us from other injuries. It is a signal that something is wrong with our body, like sportive injuries. We know if the sportman has no pain, then he would run away and his injury would get worse, not more worse. Therefore, pain is important, I think. And the question, therefore, it isn't always bad. Pain, pain causing sometimes isn't bad too, because if we have a dislocated ankle, and therefore the doctor has to make it replace the ankle, and therefore he should make more pain. Therefore, it isn't bad every time, I think. And different people feel not the same pain, I think. Everyone's feeling is different. I have to think about my other thoughts because I don't know the words I want to say. Perhaps later. Thank you.
Thank you. Lara?
Yes,
I think
I like to include that the pain is actually a protective phenomenon to take necessary measure to relieve pain. As for example, we can say that at the beginning of the cancer stage, the patient do not feel pain. And the patient, that's why at the beginning, at the early stage of the cancer, patients are not aware about their cancer, their disease. But at the latest stage of the cancer, there is pain, and at that time there is no time probably to do more for the patients. Actually, if there is no pain, there is no urge to relieve that pain. That means if there is no pain, there is no love for others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shamima. Pilara?
Yes, I agree with us, and I think the big problem is that we are addicted to the sensation, we craving with good sensation, and we react with bad sensation, with pain, for example, and we can learn to feel the sensation in an objective way. So with the understanding that every sensation pass away.
Hello?
Hello. I think it's very interesting discussion going on pain. Just I would like to share another dimension of pain, that is the expression of pain, how people express their pain, because there is also kind of cultural implications of expression of pain. Like in our culture, in Asian culture, that if the woman cry, maybe that is socially acceptable. But if a man cry due to pain, especially the psychological pain or kind of emotional pain, so that doesn't give a sense that that person is very strong enough, especially in public. So there is some interesting expression of pain as well, and it also relates with age. And just to research point of view, as we are discussing pain in bioethics class, so whenever we prepare any consent form or do any kind of research, we have to assure that to the respondent that we will try to give them as less as possible pain, or maybe we will try to give them no pain. So that's why we are discussing this pain in such a different dimension in this bioethics class. Thank you.
And as there's no pain, no gain. So sometimes looking the pain in more positive sense, particularly in the medical area, like the diagnosis of the diseases, like pain. Several of the diseases that pain comes as a symptom, and that really push us to get to or seek a doctor or whatever clinical support. So this is pain has got a gain role as well.
Okay, thank you for your photograph, Hassan. I guess that's climbing, having some pain to gain. Okay, so the next section, 1.33, asks, can animals think? Okay, so we've talked about pain. Pain is one aspect of moral agency, and causing pain against something who can feel pain. We have a question box, question 1 of 3. What are moral agents? Is Mount Everest a moral agent? A hippopotamus? A mushroom? Or a king cobra? Okay, so which is a moral agent? Is a mushroom a moral agent? Is a king cobra a moral agent? It depends. King cobra is an animal. Hippopotamus is an animal. For some people, Mount Everest is a moral agent. If you have the electronic book, the iBook, then you can see the next slide, what animals feel pain. And that's has pictures of a kangaroo, of reptiles, of insects, and what beings are sentient. the questions as well. But in a PDF version you don't have this, so I go to section 1.3.3, can animals think? So humans possess unique moral wills. You all have your own moral will, and most of you want to exercise choice and autonomy. People have been conducting psychological experiments and observing animal behavior in attempts to answer whether animals also have some capacity for free moral judgment. Based on animal research, it has been discovered that some animals are clearly self-aware, such as higher apes, and some whales and dolphins. Chimpanzees have been taught to communicate to human languages, for example, sign language or computer symbols. Some mothers also taught their babies how to talk to humans. This has given us a new way of looking at other species. Behavior is determined by genes, environment, and moral choices. Okay, so some chimpanzee mothers have been teaching their babies to talk to human beings using a computer language. So here the teacher is a mother, chimpanzee. She's been taught, she teaches. And now we're getting to the next generation where the babies who were taught by their chimpanzee mother will teach their babies to talk to humans as well. So the teachers here are great apes teaching next generation of great apes into cross-species communication. This has obviously some significance for us. Underneath the picture of the chimpanzee and the white leopard cub, in 1993, a book called The Great Ape Project was published calling for equal rights for chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans with human beings. So these are 4 great apes. It's claimed that these 4 species of higher primates form a more natural group to confer ethical duties on, rather than humans as the only species having rights. There are several other questions. In almost all societies, a moral rule is we do not eat humans. What about for other species? That we discussed, in fact, in some tribes, in some groups, it's a norm to eat other human beings out of respect or as a hunger. Question 8. Do other species also have the capacity to love animals from different species? And question 9. Do you think we should eat whales? How much do you think dolphins and whales can think? How does intelligence depend on the environment? And we will come, as we go think about these questions, we will come back to these. Section 1.34, the case of chimps and humans. The origins of our selfish and altruistic behavior are fundamental to how we behave, and these behaviors are seen among living organisms to different degrees. We can compare the behavior and genetic differences between human beings and other animals. Our closest genetic relation is the chimpanzee, followed by the gorilla. On the 1st of September 2005, the first comprehensive comparison of the genetic blueprints of humans, Homo sapiens, and chimpanzees, pan-troglodytes, showed that our closest living relatives share 98.7% of our DNA sequence. This was reported by an international research consortium, the Chimpanzee Sequencing and Analysis Consortium, in the journal Nature. The chimp sequence draft represented the first non-human primate genome and a 4th mammalian genome described in a major scientific publication. The draft of the human genome sequence was published in September 2001. The draft of the mouse genome sequence was published in December 2002, and a draft of the rat sequence was published in March 2004. The essentially complete human sequence was published in October 2004. Okay. Since then, we've seen many genome sequences completed, and with the current technology, it is possible to sequence a human genome within 1 or 2 days. Okay, the cost is now around $1,000 US. A company is commercially sequencing. So if you, instead of, if you have an extra $1,000 that you would like to use, you can sequence your genome. Probably it's better that you do your study by ethics, might be better, but it's actually cheaper to sequence your genome. And so it's interesting, the price has come down so much because the price of the first genome sequence of human beings, estimated cost is a few $billion. But the current price for if you want to do your human genome sequence, is $1,000 US, commercial price. Okay, so it's really come down. It allows us, of course, to sequence multiple genomes. In fact, sequencing different individual chimps, individual human beings, for medical practice. When you consider that the cost of one day in hospital in the United States is well over $1,000, it's actually cheaper to sequence your whole DNA sequence than to stay a day in a hospital. And it's kind of a remarkable, I think, that the cost has become so cheap. This allows us to, of course, look at different things. So coming back to the chimpanzee-human comparison, a quote in the next paragraph, "As our closest living evolutionary relatives, chimpanzees are especially suited to teach us about ourselves," said the study's senior author Robert Waterston, chair of the Department of Genomic Sciences of the University of Washington School of Medicine in Seattle. "We still do not have in our hands the answer to a most fundamental question: what makes us human? But this genome comparison dramatically narrows the search for key biological differences between the species. The DNA used to sequence the chimp genome came from the blood of a male chimpanzee called Clint at Yerkes National Primate Research Center in Atlanta. Clint died in 2004 from heart failure at the relatively young age of 24. Most chimps live closer to 40 to 50 years of age. But 2 cell lines from the primate, from Clint, were preserved at the Coriell Institute for Medical Research in Campton, New Jersey, which is a major international repository for cell lines, human cell lines, and now for chimp cell lines, and a few other species too. The consortium found that the chimp and human genomes are very similar and encode very similar proteins. The DNA sequence that can be directly compared between the 2 genomes is almost 99% identical. When DNA insertions and deletions are taken into account, humans and chimps still share 96% of their sequence. At the protein level, 26% of genes code for the same amino sequences in chimps and humans. In fact, the typical human protein has accumulated just one unique change since chimps and humans diverged from a common ancestor about 6 million years ago. To put this in perspective, the number of genetic differences between humans and chimps is approximately 60 times less than seen between humans and mouse, and about 10 times less than that seen between the mouse and the rat. Okay, so on the other hand, the number of genetic differences between a human and chimp is about 10 times more than between any 2 humans. Okay, so on average, if I compare the genes of myself with another member of the class here, the number of differences we have is about 10% of the differences between myself and a chimpanzee. Okay. But you can see here still with a chimp is 60 times less difference than it is between me and a mouse. So researchers discovered that a few classes of genes are changing unusually quickly in both humans and chimpanzees compared with other mammals. These classes included genes involved in the perception of sound, transmission of nerve signals, production of sperm, and cellular transport of electrically charged molecules called ions. Researchers suspect the rapid evolution of these genes may have contributed to the special characteristics of primates, especially the neurobiology, but further studies are needed to explore the possibilities. Okay, so we can see that we have a very similar genome sequence. The genomic analysis also showed that humans and chimps appear to have accumulated more potentially deleterious mutations in genomes over the course of evolution than have mice, rats, and other rodents. While such mutations can cause diseases that may erode a species' overall fitness, they may also have made primates more adaptable to rapid environmental changes and enabled them to achieve unique evolutionary adaptations, researchers said. Okay, so what that's saying is apparently human beings and chimps have more mutations which cause disease in their genome and accumulate these than mice or rats do. And so it's postulated that the reason that because of this we are more adaptable and more variety inside our species to the environment change, because we possibly either we have you could imagine either an enhanced mutation rate or a less stringent repair mechanism for mutations, allowing accumulation of mutations that creates diversity. And as you know, human beings are quite diverse. Sometimes people are born with a new gene, even from another person. And although the average difference between two individuals is about 1 million base pairs, there are some individuals with a 5 million base difference from another, okay, which is very significant. You know, you have an extra 5 million base pairs in your genome, which can encode in certain functions, and it creates different abilities, and some of these abilities may be negative abilities, which we may call disabilities. Next paragraph. Despite the many similarities found between humans and chimp genomes, the researchers emphasized the important differences exist between the two species. About 35 million DNA base pairs differ between the shared portions of the two genomes, each of which, like most mammalian genomes, contain 3 billion base pairs. In addition, there are another 5 million sites that differ because of an insertion or deletion in one of the lineages, along with a much smaller number of chromosomal rearrangements. Most of these differences lie in what's believed to be DNA of little or no function. However, as many as 3 million of the differences may lie in the crucial protein coding genes or other functional areas of the genome. Now, some of you may remember several weeks ago we read a paper on the analysis of the human genome sequence. And so actually I need to update this paragraph here, because what they found is, although only 3% of the human genome is involved in protein coding, 90% of the human genome is involved in, is expressed. And RNA expression is a much greater significance, much greater variety than the protein expression. And so we're still understanding the functions of many types of RNA, and so it's quite interesting. And so these differences we can say in the protein coding, but we need also to see other functional areas. A small number of other genes have undergone even more dramatic changes. More than 50 genes present in the human genome are missing or partially deleted from a chimp genome. This corresponding number of gene deletions in the human genome is not yet precisely known. For genes with known functions, potential implications of these changes can already be discerned. So yesterday, remember we talked about a mouse model. They made a triple transgene modified mouse. The mouse had 3 human genes into the mouse. So simply, what happens if we put these 50 missing genes into chimpanzee? Then we have a humanized chimpanzee. Now, of course, the expression, the gene expression, the control is much more complex than we can arrange at the moment. That if we were, for example, to in the future understand more of this, it is possible to make humanized chimps. We have questions of the ethics of this we'll come back to. The next paragraph, for example, researchers have found that 3 key genes involved in inflammation appear to be deleted from a common ancestor of humans and chimps in the chimp genome, possibly explaining some of the known differences between chimps and humans in respect to immune and inflammatory response. On the other hand, humans appear to have lost the function of caspase 12 gene, which produces an enzyme that may help protect other animals against Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so chimpanzees have the caspase 12 gene, and it's thought that this may help protect chimpanzees against Alzheimer's. If it is, then that would be a very useful model to insert. Everyone please mute your microphone. Up to 75% of the 30,000 genes.
Also ich habe ein anderes Produkt haben wir schon entworfen. Hat nichts mit Krebs zu tun, das hat was mit Vorbeugung von Malaria.
Okay, good. So we've got Anke has joined. So up to 75% of the 30,000 genes that both chimpanzees and humans have may be involved in determining our behavior. A scientific question would be to examine how similar the DNA of humans, chimpanzees and mice are. The complete genome sequence of hundreds of species is available on the internet. Next paragraph. Researchers have found 6 regions in the human genome that have strong signatures of selective evolutionary changes over the past 250,000 years. One region contains more than 50 genes, while another contains no known genes and lies in an area that scientists refer to as a gene desert. Intriguingly, this gene desert may contain elements regulating the expression of a nearby protocarhedron gene. The protocarhedron gene has been implicated in patenting of the nervous system. The 7th region with moderately strong signals contains FOXP2 and cystic fibrosis transmembrane receptor genes. FOXP2 has been implicated in the acquisition of speech in humans. And cystic CFTR codes for protein involved in ion transport, and if mutated can cause a fatal disease, cystic fibrosis, is thought to be the target of positive genetic selection in European populations. That is, it was favored because if you have only one copy of a mutated allele, you have resistance to certain infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, which was common in larger cities. Just going back to the protocarhedron, these are a mammalian subgroup of a carhedron superfamily of homophilic cell adhesion proteins. Okay, and in fact the carhedrons are, some of you may remember last year we looked at a paper on octopus, the octopus genome. Octopus, as you may remember, and those of you who haven't done it, is an extremely clever animal, and actually its nervous system has overexpressed carhedron proteins. I think it has, if I remember, something like 1,600 carhedron genes, whereas great apes have around 300 or 4, something like that. So its nervous system and the complex nervous system of the octopus is using a different system, but the cohedrons are certainly overexpressed in octopus, and part of the behavioral system has been using the cohedrons. For those of you who don't remember that paper, we can go back and look at it on the, we may revisit it. I think it's very significant in terms of different models of moral agency and the genetic encoding of that. We're almost at the end of the chapter, the last paragraph. The chimp and human genome sequences, along with those of a wide range of other organisms such as mouse, honeybee, roundworm and yeast, can be accessed through the internet. The websites are there. Animals as moral agents. The family bonds are well developed in chimpanzees, and mothers teach human children many skills, including, as I mentioned at the start of the chapter, communication systems to communicate with humans. So not only can they teach chimpanzee language, and each village of chimpanzee has a slightly different language. Okay? The same as each village or each tribe of human beings has a different language. Chimpanzee villages also have different languages. So when you're people who are studying and trying to understand the chimpanzee language, have to, it's very village dependent, depending on which village you're working on. And the second slide, an interesting aspect is bird brains, much smaller, but the behavior is very sophisticated of some birds. So our understanding of the function of the brain, still a lot of things to do. So question 9, does it change your opinion of chimpanzees to know that there are less than 100 genes different between them and humans? In fact, the figure I think is 73. Between 50 to 73 genes are different. And how much do you think behavior is genetically, socially or environmentally influenced, and how can we study this? And Jane Goodall, for example, just before we open the discussion, has mentioned that, and others have studied rain dances in chimpanzees. In times of drought, they do a rain dance, the same as many human beings do a rain dance to pray to God for the rain. So the obvious question is, what is the meaning of these sorts of behavior? And we obviously have a lot to learn, which is very interesting. Okay, so I open for any questions or discussion.
Yes, may I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I want to say that it is so obvious that animals and insects can think on their own. They just think on a different perimeter. That's what it is. And not only animals and insects can think, they even receive revelation from God. According to religion, the honeybee making the beehive is said to be a revelation of God to the bee. And I want to say that, give an example of how animals think and plot. I would say relay an observation about a group of monkeys. When a group of monkeys inhabit in a few trees, which is their territory, and they stay there, inhabit there with a number of female monkeys and male monkeys. They cohabit together. And when a group of other monkeys from other territory wants to take over the territory of those monkeys, the male members of those invading monkeys, they come to the other territory and make an observation of the place of battle. they plot and they think, and they come back after a few days, and then they attack the male members of the monkeys of that territory, and they beat them up very severely and injures them. And the females do not take part in the battle; they just observe. And when the invading group of monkeys beat up those monkeys who were on that territory, those monkeys who got beat up in the battle, they leave that territory, and the invading group of monkeys take over those trees, and they take possession of those female monkeys, and the leader of the invading group of monkeys only mates with the female group of monkeys that was in that territory, and no other monkeys from that group are allowed to mate with those females who are in that territory. So this shows a lot of planning and plotting and intelligence and thinking. So it is evident that animals and insects can think very sharply also, but in a different parameter. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, no, very interesting. Thank you, Arif, and Abbas was agreeing there. Any other, go ahead, any other comments? Other people?
Well, I just want to share, can you hear me? Yeah, the thing is that, when we watch the documentary in the geographical channel that we find the animals, it's very interesting and very deep to see the animals' behavior, and it's deeply watching the facts, how even a microanimal to a macroanimal, how they behave. It automatically implies that it forces the morality. It has some morality to it, because I see that sometimes even like this, it is quiet for some time, until it is not hungry, it doesn't bother any other insect to eat. Similarly, if you see the fork of the even birds, even the carnivore animals, they used to stay and live in a kind of a group. And within their group, if there's any kind of invading from a different type of animal, how they react into this, so they're giving protection to their group or the tribe, whatever. And also, in most cases, the animals, until unless it has been disturbed for something or it is not been hungry enough, it doesn't bother any other animal, even the human as well. So how these things are, guided? There's some kind of morality, of course, in their mind and body. So this is just an observation, but I really want to say that as you have read through the last part of the chapter about the genome sequencing, and as you have mentioned that the 99% of the split of chimpanzee and human has got its genetic difference is only 10%. It's almost similar to each other if it's put into that way. And then even the thought about the 50-50 of human gene and the chimpanzee gene, the humanized chimpanzee, and then think of question around this. My question is that, you mentioned that in the genetic sequencing, the behavior domain, hotspot is majority of 75% in it. So when this kind of genetic transformation takes place, the human versus chimpanzee, so if the human take on the chimpanzee behavior or the morality of the human, now how do you look into this?
Okay, thank you. So yes, we will look at the implications of the obvious implications. If there are high moral agency for other species, we have to treat them in a different manner than if they didn't have a moral agency. So the closer they are to us, the higher their, in a sense, the rights that they have. We have the next chapter will look at especially animal experiments, but we also will be considering aspects of moral agency in the Bioethicist Love of Life book as well, to go more back into this and more in depth aspects of moral agency. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, so let's go to the next page, ethical limits of animal use. Section objectives. There is a long history of the special relationships between other animals and humans. For example, the use of animals in farming or as domestic companions. Use of animals in factory farming and scientific experiments have stimulated interest in whether animals have particular rights. This section aims to show 1. Factors that people use to claim that animals have rights. 2. Ways that society regulates the use of animals. 3. Sources of intrinsic and extrinsic value of living organisms. 1.4.1 What are animal rights? Animals are used in many ways by people. Do animals have a right to live without pain caused by people? Do they have a right to live free? If animals have rights, then human beings have corresponding duties towards them. While we would all agree that we have some duties to animals, there is disagreement about just how many and what kind of duties we have. We come across these issues every day when we eat meat, play with our pets, or use products made from or tested by animals. Animals which feel pain are called sentient animals. In practice, one important criteria we use in judging the use of animals is how much pain is caused. Let us consider some of the factors that people use to discuss animal rights. And you can think of many ways animals are used in society, and you can think of some examples of cruelty to see in animals. The next section, 1.42, intrinsic and extrinsic ethical factors for ethical use in animals. We can think of ethical factors within an organism itself, intrinsic factors that are external to it. A summary of some factors for judging animal use is below. Intrinsic ethical factors: pain, self-awareness, conscious of others, ability to plan for the future, value of being alive. Extrinsic factors: the human necessity, desire, human sensitivity to animal suffering, brutality in humans, effect on other animals, religious status of animals, and what is natural. Okay. So these are some of the examples of intrinsic and extrinsic ethical factors. We can see there is value in something being alive when we observe the way that most people protect life. Various qualities in animals increase their ethical status, including the capacity to feel pain, self-awareness, being conscious of others, and ability to plan for the future. Many extrinsic factors are important in deciding whether it is ethical to use animals or not. Destruction of nature and life by humans is caused by 2 human motives: necessity, needs, and desire, wants. It is more ethically acceptable to cause harm if there is some necessity for survival than if there is a simply desire for more pleasure. If we're going to harm life, a departure from the ideal of doing no harm or love of life, it should be for very good reason. Such a reason might be survival, and we can see this as natural. All organisms consume and compete with others. Plants compete with each other for space to grow. Animals eat plants, and other animals, bacteria, fungi, also compete for resources and space, sometimes killing other organisms, at other times competing without killing, and also cooperating in mutual symbiosis. This distinction is required even more as humans' desire continues to destroy the environment of the planet, including many endangered animal species and even whole ecosystems. Other extrinsic factors that are important include human sensitivity to suffering or the effects of upsetting other animals. Being cruel to animals may also lead to brutality towards people. There is debate over what is the natural way to treat animals, as it changes between culture. Certain religions give special status to some animals. For example, Hindu religion gives cows a high status so that few Hindu persons will kill cows for food. This also means that in India, animals are not used in school experiments. There is a trend in all countries for less use of animals in schools for teaching and experimentation. Question 2. Do you agree or disagree that it is sometimes necessary to harm animals so that you can live? So I'd like to open for discussion on question 2. Do you agree that sometimes it is necessary to harm animals so that you can live?
Yes, I want to ask a question, which is eating animals be considered cruelty to animals, or is it a part of civilized behavior?
It depends on the way that the animal may be killed, I think. For some people they think it's cruelty, for other people they don't think it's cruelty, is another way to answer. But you can ask, for example, if it seems biologically it's natural that we eat animals. Our teeth are made in that way and our body is made in that way. A place in the evolutionary system is made in that way. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that it's not cruel. Okay? And so that is the it may be a natural, but it may still be cruel. Now that we know ways to kill animals without causing so much pain, we consider it cruel to cause animals too much pain. We have better methods, faster methods for killing, for example. Okay? And we can think of variations when we eat animals to try and minimize the pain. What do you think, Arif, or other people?
Yes, I would say that, as you said, that it depends on how the animal is killed. So the question comes, there are many slaughterhouses in Europe or America maybe, and how the cows, for example, how the cows are killed in those slaughterhouses. Are they slaughtered like with a knife in their throat, or they are just electrocuted, or maybe given a blunt strike on their head by an object? I don't know.
Yes, so in some, it depends. For example, you may electric shock, sudden electric shock is one way that's used. There may also be, for example, decapitation, maybe is another way. Striking on the head with a blunt object may be a method that's in some parts of the world is the only available method. Maybe people don't like cutting the head off the animal because they think it's too much blood. On the other hand, maybe it's faster for them to bleed and to die. So there were methods. I mean, that's why you also have some of this discussion in the ethics and the law literature on methods of execution of human beings. Now, we can't use drugs in animals that we're going to eat because generally the drugs will contaminate the meat. Okay? But the guillotine, for example, the guillotine was invented as a method that was meant to be painless. But if we study what happens in the brain, the guillotine may actually cause you may still be conscious for a few seconds after. So this is a question that has been raised. So sudden electric shock to put people things instantly, maybe that is one of the methods which is used in some animal slaughterhouses, which may actually be ethical, more ethical than some of the other ways. Any other comments?
I think the healthiest way is to just slaughter the animal by cutting its throat. That would be the least painful way and the healthiest way to consume the meat.
Yes, that's one way, or to cut cut off the head straight away, and then cutting the spinal cord immediately. That's so. But yes, it's a.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I lost you.
It was like animal and they're pretty close to each other, and sometimes for the sake of our living used to kill animal. That was the human story started, at the beginning time. And then afterwards, if we're looking into the animal use, it has sometimes it is a pet, sometimes we go for sarcastic use for the sport. Sometimes it really helps us because the poor people live on this because it really helps their feeding. And sometimes even with this kind of animals, the people's livelihood is being managed. And also sometimes we go for using these animals for our kind of emotional relief purpose. It become a companion to us. And slaughtering for eating, of course, whatever the way food way to slaughter, that depends on. But sometimes we go for sacrificing. In the particular the Muslim religion and in Hindu religion as well, we go for sacrifice. Like our cow sacrifice as Muslim. There is instruction from our Almighty God that it has to be cut in one single, and we have to recite our, some of the surahs from our Holy reciting. And then the pain is less to the animal, and then the animal, after this, the animal goes to the heaven directly, and we with just believe we will enjoy the meat of the, so the sacrifice giving us mindly. So, looking into the animals from so many different angles, and then also the interdependence psychological point of view, that the earthworm and all these in the earth, those are so helpful for the symbiotic effect and whatever effect. So the heterotrophs on the ground, and then the autotrophs at our earth surface level, so many interdependencies, like the birds with themselves, and then the carnivores with the plant. So that kind of interdependence is another way of their animal folk has got their interdependence looking into that way. And we, animal and human, has the kind of interdependence in one way, and also core habitude. Like it is a respect of the group in each or other. How do you see about that?
Yes, so from an ecocentric perspective, the interdependence of animals and plants and human beings are all interdependent. So what we were discussing is whether it's if we accept that system, then we will have sometimes it's justified to harm animals because maybe in the ecological system we may be eating them, and so some people take that view. Other people say, well, for example, a Jain may say that we don't cause harm to animals, and we're going to look in Biofix's Love of Life, we'll go into more detail about some of the philosophies about their specific views on breaking this principle. So okay, any other comments? Anyone else?
Yes, I have.
You go ahead. Yes, Anki.
Okay, to reduce harm to animals or pain in school teaching, I would say that instead of having these frogs and mice and each one dissects one, we slaughter a goat properly and teaching children on that, because it's even life size, almost the size of a human being. When you see the heart and the organs are bigger to see than frog and mice, and then eat the animal in the next round. You have it in a meal. I know most of the school offer meat, so why not slaughtering it and using as the slaughtering of these animals which are already eaten as a teaching aid in schools in anatomy.
Yes, I think it's. I have suggested the same thing myself, and in my laboratory days, we often, if we were using sheep, which in New Zealand was more common than goat, to use sheep for some of the experiment, then people would say, well, okay, let's for lunch we're going to grill the lamb chops or the sheep after looking at it. Because once you dissect out, you can do. Now the concern is, for some classes, especially a veterinary class, for example, it may be good to have a whole process, including the euthanasia of the animal, so that people understand how to do it with as less pain as possible. Then it will be very warm and fresh, and then to open up and do the whole exercise there. Then, of course, hygienically, you could eat the meat if it's within, a few within the same day, or same you're eating. The problem with some of the other types is hygiene. That if you leave the meat for a long time, some people may not feel it's safe. But if you do it on the same day, then it's no problem at all. You can eat afterwards. So it's very practical, and we can often say to people who object to animal experiments, well, if they eat meat, or or eat fish, then why not object? You can do the dissection on the animal that you're using. Yes, that's good to use some of the inert gases if you have access to them. Could be a humane killing anesthetizer. That's a good idea. Okay. It has not been used, I think, in animal slaughterhouses, but it's maybe used in some universities because of the access to such gases.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
I think it is a complicated issue about the situation of animals nowadays. I think we can find some other ways to decrease the animal suffering, for example, in laboratories or everywhere. But I think the most important things for us is that we should change our lifestyle, because I remember that my grandmother said that when we were, for example, young people, young period of life, we didn't use a lot of meat. For example, once or twice a week they used meat. But nowadays, every day we should use a lot of meat, for example. We can estimate how much meat, for example, McDonald's use every day for people. This is, I think, this problem originates from our lifestyle. We should change first this manner of life, and then we can think about other aspects, for example, using animals in laboratories or in other parts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Saida. Yeah. Yes, so good comments. Anybody else? We have a few people we haven't heard from today.
Darryl, I just want to make it clear on the fact once again, because as you asked about the harming animal or not, it has a lot more perspective to look into, like doing research and giving shock, pain shock and whatever to the animal is harming as well, but it has got a good purpose at the end. So it depends on what purpose we really go for harming, and we have a morality, as human morality and the ethical morality, how we define the harming. But I'm comfortable with the fact that, in our Muslim religion, as in our Holy Quran, it has been very clearly and loudly mentioned about that when Almighty created his human, and it's mentioned in surahs that some of the elements that he created for us, and he made those things halal, like sacred to us. Some of the elements we can kill them and can eat them, and some we can ride on them. So this is mentioned in one of the surahs, if I remember. So, that means it is instructed, it is guided. And now the question is, when, with that sense, as a Muslim, when we go for slaughtering or even like sacrificing the cow, we feel that it is a sacred when we eat the meat. Okay, so how do you define this? Like, is it a sense of harm? Because in my mind as a Muslim, I'm thinking it is not harming any animal, no? Particularly in our Eid festivals that we do. So, there are lots of kind of, debate and unprivate. So, can you give me a little clue on this? Like, harming animal, in what way it is looked into as a human?
Yep. Yes, so we're going to look at the motivations for animal experiments in the next section. Question 3, do we need to test safety of cosmetics and personal hygiene products using animals? Cosmetics are used by both men and women, for example deodorants. Have you heard of any shops which claim not to sell cosmetics tested on animals? Can you think of a shop which is a common chain store, cosmetic chain store, which claims it doesn't sell cosmetics tested on animals?
Yes, the Body Shop.
Yes. And what do you think, is their claim correct or slightly incorrect? So actually the Body Shop says usually in public statements, we do not sell products tested on animals. However, historically the products they're selling were tested on animals. What they're not doing is they're not doing new animal tests, because actually the products already have sufficient animal testing data done. So by using models or mimics of, or actually chemical copies of most existing. So they use old knowledge. They made a moral point, but it's sort of interesting because they actually do use many products were found to be safe over years of animal testing, and so the response of shops like the Body Shop and consumers who support it is actually that we don't need more products to be tested on animals. We already have a lot of products tested on animals already, and traditional cosmetics and products also. So question, who decides what's necessity or what's a desire? At school, for example, dissections, are they necessary? In some countries they are not allowed, even at university, to do experiments which kill live animals. Of course, you can go to a butcher and get, or go to the meatworks and get the remains of an animal or the whole animal as a dissection tool, and it has an advantage that many people can look around one carcass and it was going to be killed in any way. As Anke said, if you get it fresh enough, you could actually eat it for a barbecue afterwards. And some zoology departments do that. Okay, have a barbecue after the dissection class, but it's not it depends, you see, on the freshness and for the health safety. So 1.43, animal experiments, is the next section. Thank you for the list of companies that do test on animals, and many companies actually use products based on animal testing. The claim is, I think it is valid to say, we don't need new animal tests. There's already so many products available. Why kill more animals than what we need? So the issue of animal experiments has caused more debate than eating animals. It's a little ironic because in most countries the scale of animal use for food is much greater than it is for experimentation, and eating animals is a choice based on desire more than necessity. That desire is supported by long-standing cultural traditions and cuisines. However, from a moral point of view, some animal experiments are done with the hope of directly saving human life in medical research. On the other hand, luxury products such as cosmetic testing can be said not to be necessary. In the past decade, there have been less animal experiments conducted, and we can expect more ethical alternatives to continue to be developed using alternative methods for testing product safety. These may also prove cheaper and more efficient. These alternatives include computer models, use of isolated cell culture, and comparisons to existing data. Some factors used in guidelines to assess whether or not animals should be used in experiments include the aim of the experiment, the realistic potential to achieve the goals, the species of animal, possible pain, duration of discomfort or distress, duration of experiment in terms of lifespan, number of animals, quality of animal care, available alternatives to the experiment, and the credibility of the researchers. Okay, so these factors answer the question before we had on how do we decide the morality of the use of animals, especially with regard to interventions by human beings. We could apply it, of course, to other things too, and we will in this chapter. So at the practical level, the feeling of pain is the first major guiding principle for animal treatment. There is a debate about self-awareness, which would be necessary for animals to express autonomy, and about whether they are capable of thinking, or a certain degree of perception and cognition. These concerns are one reason why researchers try to choose the animals lower on the evolutionary scale for experiments and product testing. So how would if we do an experiment, then what's the aim? What species of animals? So we use an animal that has less moral agency, let's say. It has less sentience, less consciousness. We go back 2 pages to the intrinsic ethical factors. Pain, self-awareness, conscious others, ability to plan for the future, value of being alive. So these intrinsic factors are particularly important. There are some animals which we don't think have an ability to plan for the future. There are some which may not be conscious of others. Some may not even be self-aware. But many will feel pain. And every living organism has a value of being alive. So we may choose an animal for an experiment which is lower along this so-called moral hierarchy. Now some people question, they say all species should be the same, but I think while there's a point of view to say everything is important in the ecological system, our morality of causing pain, which we agreed is wrong to cause pain, and it's wrong to inhibit the plans of somebody else, infringe on their autonomy or self-determination. So we can choose animals lower. We can minimize the pain. We can minimize the discomfort or distress. We have to think about the duration of the experiment in terms of lifespan. Now, the lifespan of a mouse, natural lifespan, may be a couple of years. The lifespan of the Alzheimer's disease mice, we talked yesterday, basically 9 months. They came up to 9 months, they're going to an experiment, and after the experiment they're going to be anesthetized and the brain taken out and made into sections to study the brain. So the actual time of their life, duration of the experiment in terms of the lifespan, was maybe 1 week, 1 to 2 weeks, between the injections and the insertion of the optical fibers. And yet before that they lived probably within groups of 2 to 5 mice, it's said in the paper. So they lived in a laboratory, constant temperature, constant food and water whenever they wanted. Possibly some mice would prefer a more free life, but it has certain risks of being eaten, and being eaten by other animals may sometimes be a painful experience. So we have to think about that too. But we are the moral agent causing the pain, so it's upon us that the blood of the mouse or the life is taken. So that's something all moral beings, including scientists who do experiments on animals, have to think, or people who eat. The number of animals. We can design experiments. Now, we will talk about later, if we use genetically constant animals or even clones, we can use a very small number of animals because genetically they're identical and their responses will be very similar. The main difference is only the treatment. The genes are the same. So that is an argument for saying, or some inbred lines or cloned lines maybe reduce the number of animals in the experiment. If it's an inbred line, however, if you remember the problem of inbreeding, for example, consanguineous marriages in human beings, inbreeding leads to a number of babies being born that have a disease or death, okay? Because you cluster together recessive harmful mutations. So breeding inbred lines, you have less numbers needed for the experiment. However, you do have some casualties on the way of getting animals that are healthy enough. Available alternatives. Maybe we don't need this experiment. So these are some of the issues. Question 5. What are the differences between us using an animal killed accidentally and one that was grown and killed especially for an experiment? Do you think we should kill animals for an experiment? So what are the implications of question 5? For, let's say, for a school doing experiments, what would you do if you wanted to do a dissection? What are the differences between using an animal killed accidentally and one grown and killed especially for an experiment? Any comments?
Hello.
Hello?
I would like to say something. Once upon a time, human beings, used the animals, for example, carrying the material or something else. For example, we carried most of our products by camel and horse or donkey. But now, today, there is no need for this, and human create different machines, automobiles and so on, to carry this kind of things. In my opinion, in today's society, in today's technology, we do not need animals for experiments, but we are not studying so much to find alternative ways for experimental objects. I think it is high time for find another sources for experiment, not animals, but for example, in vitro laboratory situations or something else, but we should find different sources for experiments. Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to respond to this particular question. Okay, so killing animal accidentally and for experiment purpose, this of course cannot be comparison because it's a two different thing. So even for the experimental purpose, if it is being done and ethically, accepted, and it is intended for a scientific good cause, which will really serve the humanity in a better reasoning. And so this is one way of looking into them. Maybe this is not killing. And accidental has got two different things. One is intentional accidental and is unintentional. So that has got certain morality to it as well. So these are two different things, not really comparable to each other. It has two different ways of looking into it. And coming to the fact of when you talked about this animal, product using in cosmetics and all this, so we can go for avoiding certain of the things like nowadays the herbal product is quite getting to be quite attractive in the market as well, and it's more people are more into it. So the cosmetics can be thought of more alternative biological alternatives, particularly in herbal, than the animal product. And at the same time, we can think about lifestyle change as well, because having a lot more animals slaughtering, killing, and having them meat for us as a human being, it is not always good for us. It has a lot of harm to us. We need a certain amount of protein diet, of course, in our body every time. And we have to replace that protein according to our need. And there are many other sources of proteins other than animal protein that we know that. So if we reduce the burden of having animal protein like red meat and all this, and we change our lifestyle, even we are moderately risk-free for many of the diseases even. So it's not only just unnecessarily killing or harming animal, also safeguard body. So it is a double good purpose, because many of the red meat has got so much to heart disease and many other problems in it. So the lifestyle change can really moderately support and help this animal killing.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Other comments to the question? Thank you, Shahanas, for putting the comments in the box, facts and figures.
Darryl, shall I say something?
Yes, please.
After listening to all people, actually I feel very guilty myself. As a biochemist, I'm doing many experiments on animals. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry. I feel guilty, but I have to do these experiments. Hassan said we can make experiments in vitro conditions, maybe in cell culture or something like that, but we have no in vitro environment for all experimental models. and in vitro is different our in vivo experiments. So we have to use in vivo conditions for our experiments. We have to use animal models before applying these models to human. So we have to use animals. And even I am responsible for our animal experiment center. I'm very sorry, but we have to.
So Norton, what guidelines, you have guidelines, and do you sometimes on the animal committee, do you sometimes refuse proposals from experimenters?
Of course, yes, we have, guidelines, human rights guidelines. We have international guidelines for these experiments. We use them, and we have animal ethics committee. I am a member of this committee as well. But sometimes we refuse experiments. We are trying to be very careful. To minimize their pain, to protect their rights. So it's not very easy. But sometimes you cannot say no. We have to do. All other scientists have to do these experiments. It's necessary.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you, Norton, for sharing your experiences. And then it's interesting that sometimes you're refusing some. Any other comments? Anybody else?
I would like to make a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's very delicate issue, no doubt about that. But when we are commenting on the ethics and animals, and especially the question you raised, that whether we should use the animals in experiments. So it's a dilemma, because there is a question between science and ethics. So whether it's a conflict of science and ethics, or whether it is unintended use of this kind of creature to the name of research, which is not a true research. So if there is a strong code of conduct, what we just have heard, like guideline or animal ethics committee, and what kind of experimentation is being done, and ultimately we have one thing, that risk and harm. So whether the risk is risk and benefit, so the balancing of the risk or benefit, or analyzing the risk and benefit. So when we think to give approval of any of the research project for ethical reason, always the ethics committee review that whether the risk is more or benefit is more. So the point is, if the risk is more, definitely that research cannot be done ethically. And if the benefit is more, then we also have to justify very carefully whether it is human being or whether it is animal, or any kind of experimentation. Not only the physical experimentation, also there are a lot of psychological experimentation which also creates harm and pain. So the point is whether we are doing unnecessary experiments where we are using the animals which is really not needed, or whether there are really some experiments we need the results from the animal studies first before applying it to the human being. That could be considered more carefully, rather than telling that stop experimentation of animals. So what does that mean? Is that mean that we are going to start all these experiments on the human being? So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so this is a dilemma of we have guidelines here, and it means we limit some types of experiment, and in some countries they may pass a law against, depending on their culture. In other countries they may allow multiple experiments, and we consider those characters which we saw in the list in order to which ones we're going to approve or judge. Okay, so I think I'd like to go on. Maybe somebody's trying to talk, we cannot hear.
Is she speaking?
Sorry?
Darryl, I just want to add with Faria, as she rightly mentioned about the conflict of science and ethics, just to get from a little clue on this, because like, you know, when the ethical committee go for any kind of animal experimentation, do you know that what are the major ethical points they consider? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like one is, of course, if it is scientifically enough reason why, of course, and that risk benefit thinking as well as number 2. And number 3, as you said, that moral hierarchy, that there are certain of the animals which has got higher moral consciousness, so they may think about the comparative, you know, decision making of the lower moral consciousness animals to be the first priority experimentation. So other than what are the other 2 or 3 important ethical considerations they think before they give the clearance?
Yeah. So some of the factors they use for the experiments are, as in that list, basically the aim, the potential to achieve goals, species of animal. This is a standard list from many researchers that is used, and so these are the conclusion of ethics. Okay. So I will go on. Sheikh, please mute your microphone. Okay. Thank you, Zara, also, yes, for the 3 R's, refinement, reduction, and replacement. These are common simple measures and a summary of those for researchers to remember. And an answer to the question is question 5. And so if I was at school, for example, and in the school, the school teacher has to have a dissection of a bird or a dissection of a mammal. Should they, take a freshly killed one from the an animal experimental facility, and they kill a rabbit specially, or they kill a bird specially, or should they take the roadkill, for example, the bird hit by the car, or the cat or dog on the side of the road, and take this into the school and use the opportunity to dissect, and instead of killing freshly? And the ethical answer is probably it's good to use the roadkill. I'm going to have to hang up. Probably it's better to use a roadkill. But of course, let's say it was a roadkill next to the school of somebody's dear pet cat. Obviously, teachers wouldn't do that, you'd hope, because it'd be sensitive. But if it was from a different area, but see, then in some countries you have to report if you hit a dog, because dogs are a pet. Okay, and then but if it's that's why it's easier if it's in an animal slaughterhouse or by to use that. If it's a bird, let's say suddenly, unfortunately, you hit a bird on the way to your school, and as a teacher, can you take the bird and say, he's a dead bird, I hit it by mistake, we're going to use this to dissect. And then it seems a reasonable use of the bird. Of course, so being sensitive for the intrinsic ethical factor and the extrinsic. And the extrinsic factor is, of course, somebody's pet, for example, or emotion to a certain animal, you would not want to use. Yeah, even though intrinsically, it may mean you're going to be killing another animal, especially for dissection. Okay, so these are some of the examples we have to think about. So using opportunities, as a biologist, you may remember, let's say a whale is washed up on the ocean, onto the beach, and I think in the last couple of months there's been a lot of whales washed up in Britain. I've been talking about it, especially we don't know what's happening in the ocean or why they're being washed up. And there are also giant squids. The gigantic squid sometimes is washed up, and whenever it's washed up, of course it's an unusual animal. The giant squid is not so heavy. They usually get a truck and take it to the university to dissect because they're very rare, and the only way people can study is when they get washed up on the beach or come in the fishing net, and then the fishermen will bring it and then usually take it to the university. So this again is, do we use these dead animals? In some sense, intrinsically it makes more sense, but we have to consider the extrinsic aspects as well. The next page, 1.44, eating meat and farming. Some people choose not to eat animals. A vegetarian is a person who does not eat animals. A vegan is one who doesn't eat any animals or animal products, milk, eggs, or use animal products such as leather. It can have some health advantages to eat less meat to lower the level of saturated fat, especially in middle-aged persons living in countries where people eat too much. Some choose not to eat animals for moral or religious reasons. Eating more plants also has environmental advantages as food and energy are wasted in the transfer from plants to animals. However, except for South Asia, most people today say it's natural for us to eat some meat or fish. Even if we do eat animals, we should minimize the harm we cause. Many people will continue to eat animals, and practical issues must improve the ethical treatment of all animals. One area of particular concern is whether farm animals should be kept in a field, a caged box, or factory farm. The confinement of animals such as veal calves, pigs and poultry in small cages has led some countries to set minimum enclosure areas for each animal. It's been illegal to use so-called battery cages in Switzerland for chickens since 1992. The concerned countries need to also reduce demand by restricting imports of products from such farms. So, since 1992, there are a few other countries who have made limits on the use of battery cages. But if you think about it, 1992 is now 2016. It's 24 years. It basically means a whole generation of Swiss people grew up eating chicken and eggs from chickens which were not in battery cages. So that was, an interesting approach. Of course, the Swiss, it was enacted through the Swiss public policy system of the referendums. Switzerland has an interesting law which allows a public referendum to be held and to determine the law. It's a novel way of direct democracy that's not used in many countries, but it's quite an interesting method because it means some initiatives like this can go through, and if majority of the people in the referendum vote for that measure, it will become the law. Next paragraph, each society has to decide how much more they are prepared to pay for better treatment of animals, such as the costs of eliminating battery farming. Another example is using the protein bovine growth hormone in cows to make them produce about 10% more milk. Thus, there is some cost in production of not using new animal treatments such as bovine growth hormone to produce cheaper milk or meat. It's also important to consider the effects of policies on the different communities involved in agriculture, as well as on the rights of consumers and the animals themselves. So where do you get your meat? Is it on farms made on land that changed natural habitat to farmland? Do you hunt wild animals in their natural habitat? Do you grow animals in a garden? Do you get meat from a supermarket? So this is a interesting question. Most people get their meat from a supermarket. Where do you buy your food? Okay, so you may buy your food in a supermarket. Yeah. Maybe you buy it. Some countries you can buy the food from a cage on the side of a road. If any of you have been to some countries in Asia where they sell live chickens, okay, the advantage of a live chicken, of course, for the consumer is it's fresh. It may be stressed, which may mean it's tough. Some of them are quite stressed, so it leads to adrenaline, which means it's actually stressed, compared to a chicken which is not in a stressful environment when it's killed. But it is fresh. So this is in some food markets you have different cultures like this. So that was a section briefly explaining vegetarians, vegans. Vegans are, there's quite a few in Britain. It's kind of developed quite a lot in Britain. And of course, in the other material, we're going to look at religious vegetarianism, which is common, of course, in India, also common in Sri Lanka, with Sri Lankan Buddhism is often vegetarian, and different ways that we judge whether or not to eat animals. I will read the next part as well, 1.45, the zoos. Another ethical question that can be asked is whether we should keep animals in zoos. Zoos and wildlife parks have a value in preservation of endangered species and in gaining public support for conservation campaigns. An understanding of life and ecology can make people appreciate animals more. There's a trend for zoos to give animals greater space and freedom, which meets more of our natural requirements of animals. And I don't know if you have local animal parks to visit, and do you think zoos and wildlife parks help to preserve endangered species? Question 14, the next page. Should we capture animals for the purpose of keeping them in zoos, or under what conditions? Would the capture and keeping of animals be ethical? An example of this, killer whales, orcas. There's been a lot of controversy in the SeaWorld San Diego, had these very large orca shows, killer whales, for a number of decades. And there's been increasing controversy and movements to target against SeaWorld for their treatment of killer whales and keeping them in captivity. And a long campaign, and I think finally their decision has been made after they objected for some years. They wanted to keep the revenue because it's a very popular money earner. But gradually the climate has become negative, and they decided they're going to close down the killer whale show and release their orcas into the ocean. And the stress of keeping these large animals in solitary confinement in the captive tanks when the natural habitat is the wide ocean was I think a very natural consequence of the ethics of this debate on zoos. In fact, a modern zoo, you'll go to the modern zoo and it may be difficult to find the animal because the natural environment is so nice that they try to make the habitat more natural. Whereas if you go to an old-fashioned zoo, the poor tiger is sitting in a concrete cage and stuck there for many years. There's a elephant in Ueno Park Zoo in Tokyo, which is 52 years old now. She is 52. She's lived standing on concrete for 52 years. And there's a recent discussion finally to give her a bigger enclosure, but what do you do with a 52-year-old old age elephant who's been used to living on her own all the time? Can you give her company? What sort of company is appropriate? Because there's social relationships. She's an old lady now, and so she is fragile. If you put a young one in there, they may be violent to her. So these are sort of issues of zoo culture. Question 15, do you think anyone should be able to do fishing for recreation? Okay, so many fishing is very popular. What do you think about hunting of animals for fun, such as fox hunting, or hunting deer for their antlers as a trophy? Okay. Some people, they say, I want to hunt the deer for meat. And some people say, I want to hunt the deer for the antler. Okay? And you may say, we shouldn't just kill the deer for the antler. It's a waste of the meat. But actually, 1 year later, what's left? The antler's left, not the meat. The meat's not left, it's eaten. So, can humans get the trophies from animals? And is that just to get a stuffed animal for their trophy? And you find this in so many places, antlers from deer. Question 16. In a few places where tourism is essential for the money to keep a wildlife park, the park may allow some trophy hunting of wild animals. How would you balance the ethical issues of the individual animals versus the ecosystem-wide issue of the financial survival of the wildlife park? What are some alternatives for financial survival of the park? Okay, so maybe we can open for some discussion here. Zoos, wildlife parks, eating. Any comments? And Ronnie, thank you. Good to see you here. But entertainment, circuses in some countries are banned. I think Denmark banned circuses many years ago. Circuses to use animals. They treat animals better than migrants, perhaps, we could say, in some countries. Yeah, depending on that. Of course, that may be a wrong statement to say. They may actually have high standards of human rights for people, and just trying to keep that may be quite difficult with the challenges. But it's one of the expressions some people have said. Why, if they treat animals so kindly and worry about having animals performing in circuses, can they do some other policies? So this is ethical dilemmas that everyone has. Okay. Okay, open now for discussion. Comments?
Just to share that, when you ask about whether we should benefit the zoo, and it has the moral and ethical aspect of looking into it, and then giving more kind of natural habitat to the zoo, and the rich country can afford those, and the poor country has got a very conservative zoo where the animals are very tightly placed, and we have already given an example of one as well. So just that question is like, is it only the morality question, and and even how can I say, like safeguarding, because it has the revenue earning part as well. So when the question comes to the morality, because some of the discussion earlier we had more with the science versus ethics, because now it is also economics, like an economic benefit. There's another angle of this, like whether moral, ethics and economics will benefit. The zoo has got a lot more economic purpose into it. So how it is being looked in that kind of 300 moral fight, and also as you mentioned over this, the pleasure part of killing or hunting animals. So this is a very strong, you are killing some human creature which has got maybe higher or lower moral consciousness, but to me it is absolutely for my pleasure, and killing a living creature, to me it's an absolute crime. Believe me, it cannot be a pleasure. How do you think about that?
Okay, so this, I'd like to know people's comments. Could everyone make their comment regarding the question I asked and the question we just had? Hunting, we've had some comments here. Hunting for sports or entertainment is wrong. Hunting for meat, for capture may be ethical. Yes, hello?
Unfortunately, last year in Iran was named leopard, the year of leopard, because lots of leopards were killed, were hunted and killed, unfortunately, and the government couldn't catch the hunters, illegal hunters, that they killed them. Of course, in Iran, unfortunately, some illegal hunting, some people catch some animals such as eagles or some others, and then send them to Arabic countries such as Saudi or Dubai and other cities. And it was very sad for us that we lost a lot of leopards last year because of hunting.
Yeah, so it's very sad, and it's it's nice to have a leopard. You have a leopard. It's good to have a year honoring animals, but imagine then people take these animals on the wrong way. It's really sad, as you say. So I think good comment. Hello.
Hello. Can I speak?
Yes, go ahead. Who is speaking?
Fariha.
Yeah, Fariha. Yeah.
Yeah. Just we heard about the leopard, but this kind of situation is also existing in my country, because the Royal Bengal tiger, which is a very, very famous animal all over the world. So the number of Royal Bengal tiger is also reducing very fast, and we have a very famous jungle which is called Sundarban. So there are lot of things have been taken to protect this animal. Because the number of this animal is reducing, and it's being suspected that if this kind of way is going on, hunting and killing of this type of animal, maybe in a very short period of time, we will not see any more tiger in this world, especially the Royal Bengal tiger, which is a very, very rare species, like white tiger in some parts of our other world. So though the government has lot of rules and regulation, lot of awareness is being done, and also the year was also announced as protection for the tigers. And all over the world, this kind of rare species are being protected, but still there are bad people. Still they are trying to kill this kind of animals, because their skin is very, very valuable, and still there are people in this world who are using the materials which are being made from the skins of these rare animals, and also the other parts of these animals are being used for different purposes. So it's really, really very sad, like my friend who was talking from Iran. So we are also feeling very much sad that there are people who are not protecting these kind of animals, rather than they are killing these animals. But definitely this is not kind of a very good intention, totally with a bad intention. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so it's very sad. The poaching, which is just a very selfish behavior, and raises ethical questions. Can the park rangers kill the poachers by shooting them to protect the animals? And we have this ongoing, I think, poaching of Bengal tigers or rhinoceros or other elephants in Africa and Asia. We give park rangers a license to kill, in a sense, to protect animals. And especially when they're fired upon. But usually because of the money, the poachers have much better armament, and they kill the rangers. And so because their weapons are more advanced and the money involved. And sometimes the organized criminals are involved. Coney, for example, in Africa, and others are involved in poaching and ivory trade. So these are serious. Now, I think a very interesting comment, thank you to the comment above, Darryl. What happens when there's an increase in animals that are predators while there's a decrease in herbivorous animals? Is hunting ethical then? So the ecological balance is very critical. The ecological balance, if we don't have the right balance, then we're going to cause harm to the ecosystem. Sheikh, please mute your microphone. Background noise. So if we have an increase in animals, so if we lose our top predator, let's say the Bengal tiger or the lion is taken out, will we have too many herbivorous animals which eat too much pasture and cause ecological damage, and then there's no grass for next year because the roots are taken out and it becomes a desert? So this has happened. So we do need sometimes what is the official term that's used is a cull. It's not used to kill, but they say cull the numbers, meaning too many, and we have to reduce the pressure on the ecosystem by culling. And it's controversial that, for example, some wildlife parks have limited land and too many of an endangered animal. So can you then allow hunting of certain number of animals? And we saw this controversy last year with the killing of Cecil the lion, and it opened up the issue of bounty hunting. Getting money from hunting to maintain the natural system. So if you have sufficient number of lions, can you sell the hunting license? And then you sell the hunting license, the money comes for managing the wildlife park. And if it's well managed, it is one way to keep the wildlife park going. And in fact, we see in some parts, in South Africa for example, a number of private plantations. The farmers have changed them over to hunting ranges or wildlife range, and they get some money from allowing hunters, but they also, for attracting tourists, they have to maintain a lot of nice animals, wildlife species. They make a private safari. They, of course, are breeding, allowing a place for these animals to live and grow, but the price is a few will be killed by the hunters who pay money, and that money goes to survive, to supplement what they can earn from the tourists. So this leads to overall increase in wildlife, and it's an interesting management. So you have to, of course, hunt the right animals, okay, as you say, and these hunters have to be told, well, please go and find this animal, and yeah, okay. So this transferring was the one option, of course. Hunting is another. Because if, let's say, I need to maintain the wildlife park, it's going to cost me money. And I can maintain, I could keep it, might be more profitable than farming. So why not make a wildlife park, but in order to sustain it, we need an income. And so if we think from an ecocentric perspective, an ecocentric answer will allow some loss of life, whereas a biocentric, individual biocentric life may not, because individual biocentric may say it's causing harm to kill the animal. But from an ecocentric perspective, the question of a balance between herbivores, predators, environment, preservation need to all be preserved. And overall, you'll make a decision for preserving the ecosystem. And we know that the best way of preserving animals is preserving ecosystems, not individuals. Okay, so if we can preserve the ecosystem, in the end it's going to be better. So that's one of the applications then of these balance of ethical theories. We have a few people who haven't said anything today. Would they like to, any other comments?
Okay, Darryl, I turn it back. In upstate New York, there was one particular, or a number of years that were optimal weather or lack of predators or whatever, and the white-tailed buck deer population exploded. So then the climate changed, or essentially there were too many deer chasing too many leaves, so the deers ate up all the vegetation, were starting to starve. So the state of New York granted more licenses to cull the deers down. So the deers had the option; they could either get shot or they could die of starvation. What's the best option for the poor deer? I know it's natural. Like people always complain about forest fires in the United States. Get a little off topic here. But what happens before the western part of the United States was colonized, and you had all these lightning strikes that caused all these forest fires? Well, that was just a natural cycle of nature. So anyway, I guess the agreement is to take the carrion, the carcass of deers, and give it to the poor people or schools or whoever else wanted it. So at least some good could come out of it. But essentially it was a no-win situation, at least for the deers anyway. And that was the best that they could do. It's called the herd.
Yes, it's difficult for these situations. But I think, what can we do in a sense? It's preservation of the ecosystem is what we really need. Okay. Any other comments?
As you mentioned about this biocentric, looking into an ecocentric ecological balance, which was my first thinking in the beginning of the class, that there's an interdependence. So socially and naturally the world is already balanced, and we have to follow through the nature. Nature is the best science that really guides us. But the thing is, coming to the economic benefit, because when we think about harming animal, particular research purpose, then the science and ethics has got a fight into it. And then, when you are going for an animal zoo or hunting animal and using like the paria shooter, like Randall tigers, the poison and things are used for expensive purpose and all this, and making money out of it. So there is an economic aspect into it. So there is a conflict against not only science and ethics, it's more kind of a economics and ethics of the animal. So how do you see about it? And there is an animal rights group who are very proactive at the moment. It's like for the last couple of many years, this is a very strong group coming up in the world, and they have a lot more responsibility to do in campaign for protecting the animals. So is there any kind of ethical consideration in research work where there is an ethical points, and then every research which are relevant to the animal trial, they have to pass through the ethical committee and ethical consideration? Is there any kind of a hunting related guideline or something? Is there?
Yes, there are guidelines for ethical hunting, and some national parks will impose that, and some governments will impose hunting licenses under which conditions hunting licenses will be allowed legally, and hopefully these systems are based on ethical considerations. So Anke mentioned the case of Cecil the lion, who was enticed out of the boundary of the national park by putting meat to make a kind of meat trail, so he could go out the national park boundary and then shoot them out there. Now, of course, that is against the law and against the ethics of hunting. It's well stated, but it is a practice which has been obviously done, and only because he was a famous lion was made a fuss of. It's commonly done for other predators, but you get them out, and and so this is quite a big challenge. The last part of the
just to make one final comment on hunting.
Yes, go
Hello?
ahead. Yep.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah. As Nazinappa was talking about, is there any law regarding the hunting? Maybe we can see that yes, in our like 12 to 15 years ago, in our neighboring country, there is a very famous actor who killed a rare species of deer, and he was accused of killing that animal because that was a protective zone of that kind of rare species animals in that country. So still that case is going on, and that person, though he had other cases, he got the bail from the other cases, but that case still he is facing the trial, and they did not get the judgment yet. So it means that there are laws against the hunting, and especially for the protection of the rare species animal. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Pari. Yes, and so Salman Khan, yes. And also they need to have a skill. I mean, we hope that they are going to not cause suffering to the animal as well. Interesting fishing. You go ahead, Anki.
Another important is to have the right hunting tool, the right gun type, and the right caliber. I think there are some people who hunt with a harpoon who was trying to hunt but did harm the animal much more than using a bullet and the proper target shot.
Yep. Yes, the right tool. Of course, in some tribal hunting regimes, they may use traditional methods. For example, in the Arctic, some of the hunting of the whale is done by traditional methods, but a number of them nowadays will use modern methods because it's easier. Okay, and the last section, 1.46, do we need to teach using animal experiments? In a survey of bioethical issues conducted in Australia, New Zealand and Japan, which are conducted in 1993, there was much division over whether animal experiments were necessary or not. Some teachers took strong positions on either side of the question whether some animal experiments are necessary to teach biology in high school. There are also many types of experiment, for example, observation in nature, in the class, dissection, and some experiments were described that cause painful death to vertebrates. The purpose of the summary is not to take sides, but we should ask the question, what type of experiment is necessary and how much is learned? One key lesson for students is moderation and balancing. Rather than having extreme views being argued in the class, this issue allows students to imagine what it is like to be another animal. It's not likely that anyone will actually go on to do experiments on chimpanzees in their life. However, it's extremely likely that everyone will eat fish, swat a fly, cook a steak, use products or drugs developed with animal experiments, and at least use the money supported by exports of animal products for your education. If you are studying biology, you probably want to understand how animals can live, and sometimes you need to see animal experiments, whether in life or on video or in a book. The impressions from each example can be different. The data being obtained from animal experiments does have implications for all thinking beings about our place in the world, so the issue can be related to many topics. Absolutes are often difficult, but it's ethically important to make balanced choices. It is ethically consistent to try to use lower organisms, cells or computer models for animal experiments, but at some stage of testing both animal and human trials are needed. Perhaps we can say that if we study ourselves, one animal, we will learn about animal physiology, behavior and the wonders of life. So keep your eyes open when you are living and you will learn a lot. Of course, do not intentionally injure yourself, but if you do so accidentally, there is a lot to learn. And you can see, for example, if you cut yourself, you can learn lessons. By the way, almost all the pictures in this book I took, and so the picture accompanying is a picture of a donkey from the Middle East. It's another use of animals, yes, using them for transport, which we don't use much now. But you may find it interesting, for example, 100 years ago, camels were imported to the US, and especially to the western part in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. They were being used for transport, and especially the military wanted them to use in the desert as better than horses. Camels were used also in Australia, and in fact these are interesting documentaries of the Afghan camel herders of Australia. About 150 years ago, the Australian government, because of the dryness in Australia, decided to import camels, but they needed people who could deal with camels, because camels are not an easy animal to deal with, so they imported Afghan camel herders. And in fact, the first mosque in Australia is in Alice Springs, in the middle of the desert. It was a mosque for the Afghan camel herders. And they came out on schemes from Afghanistan with camels, and they were used for transport. And the advantage, of course, the extremely dry climate, no water, camel could go for days. And so camel herders in Australia are very interesting. You in the Middle East may have seen camels, and there are still some wild camels in Australia, and a few wild camels still in the United States that are left over from these experiments of using camels. But unfortunately for the camels, they became less popular because of the automobile and the train and the transport, other transport mechanisms. So use of animals has a long history. We talked about war on animals somewhat. I don't know if we've done a paper on war on animals. I think there is another interesting paper we can look at in the future on that. Okay, so that is the end of this chapter. Do you have any questions or comments on this?
Yes, my observation is that besides animals being very